בסתר עליון, בצור שדי תלונן, ומעלה למנחסים סעודתי אלוהי יפתחו, כי עצמך ניתח יקוש מדרך אבות, אלוהתו יסך לך, מתחת כנפת תחסד, תימה לסופר אמיתו, ותירה מפחד לילה מחצי יסומה, מדרך ומחיילות מכתב ישוב צהריים, בום, האלת כבר מבנת הרגש, והתינך תביט בשיר ומחשב חילק יתר מנפסי עליון, סופר מונך, לא תיונה לך רעה, נגע בגלל לך ניסה ולך, יותר כאן ככה ניסה לך, ושידות בעצם את לך, שאתה עושה את זה כדי להיות ידע שלי, אבל יותר לך לדבר.
O Lord, what are we, that you should regard us? We are like a breath, our days are like a passing shadow, they are like a dream. Like grass which is renewed in the morning it flourishes, in the evening it fades and withers. The years of our life are few, their pride is but toil. They are soon gone and we fly away. So teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. Guard the innocent and behold the upright, for there is posterity for a person of peace. Surely God will redeem my soul. The Lord redeems the soul of his servants. None of those who take refuge in God will be condemned. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. It's with sadness that we are all gathered here today to say farewell to Abe Posen, Avram ben Meir Vigittel. Abe was born in Winnipeg on September 3rd, 1921, to Meir and Gita Posen, a member of the Centenarian Club at the age of 101, and Kinsey told me another 3 weeks it would have been 102. The Talmud, in the Tractate of Tanit, relates the story about a certain rabbi named Rabbi Beroka who encountered Elijah the prophet in the marketplace. And he asked Elijah if there was anyone in the marketplace who was destined for Olam Haba, place in heaven. And Elijah pointed out to two regular-looking individuals in the marketplace. And he said those two individuals are guaranteed a place in Olam Haba, in the world to come. Rabbi Beroka was puzzled. he approached the two individuals and asked them, "What's your profession?" And they answer, "We tell jokes. We make people happy. We make people laugh, and they make peace with one another." And Rabbi Baroka understood why they were destined for heaven. Abe Posen could very well have been one of those two individuals. He had a great sense of humor and a joke for every occasion. When asked what was the secret of living to 100, he answered, "It just happened. The key is to avoid incurable diseases. Take care of yourself and stay out of trouble." When he was asked about growing up Jewish, he answered, "I was too young to argue." When he was asked about nice clothing, he would say, "It doesn't hurt to look nice." On how to treat others, he answered, "Be polite, have good manners, and never hurt anyone." Abe had a line and a joke for every person. He made people laugh, and his place in heaven is waiting for him. Abe was also a very humble man. Our rabbis extolled the trait of humility. In Pirkei Avot they tell us, "Me'od me'od hevei shefal ruach." Exceedingly, one should be humble. Maimonides wrote that one should take the middle road in every character trait. Don't go to the extremes. Always be in the middle. There was one exception to his rule, and that was humility. You can never be too humble. And Abe was that kind of a person. He always worked behind the scenes to get things done, never wanting to receive accolades for his accomplishments. Abe was also a family man. He worked hard to provide for them, and he was extremely proud of his children's accomplishments. Abe was also very grateful for everything that he had. The Jewish day begins with the words, Modeh Ani, I am thankful. And that was Abe, thankful for his family, thankful for his health, and thankful for every day that he had. Tiyeh nishmato tzrura b'tzror hachayim. May his soul be bound in the eternal bond of life, and may we all say, Amen. Amen. For the first eulogy, I'd like to call Eric.
I want to thank everyone. Is that close enough? Of course, 1,000 musicians here, and I'm doing it wrong. Okay. Thank you to everyone for attending this farewell to Abe. I stand before you having imagined this moment countless times over the last several years. For when Abe was over 100 years old, an event such as this became an omnipresent possibility. And considering the mountains of memories always left me impotent in the face of such a formidable vault. I can't imagine how many rooms my dad entered into in his quiet moments and dreams, which were the repository of such an immense repository. But those were his private trove, and I can only give voice to what I recall over 72 and a half years, for that was his legacy to me. Foremost, though, of the multiple manifestations of my dad was his relationship with his body. He was the solidly built guy in the black bathing suit on the back page of the comic books that I read in the back seat of our car on summer road trips. I'd never seen him as the guy who had the sand kicked in his face, but rather the guy in the last panel, buff, muscled, with hands on his hips, looking out with a smile that reflected the gleam of the beach sun bouncing off his biceps. A guy not to be trifled with, but a guy with a smile who would happily lift up the back end of a car with one hand if it needed to be moved in a hurry. I thought that all fathers were in the shape that he was in, and that the weeder weight cables that graced our house were standard house furniture in the 50s. But it wasn't just our house where this man stood like a superhero in those comic books, as he took this passion and taught it to others at the nascent YMHA in all its first and later iterations. Abram, your name is forever emblazoned on the wise walls of trophies and winning teams, and also as a longtime board member giving back to your community. And he didn't let a few falls, hospital stays, and a walker get in the way as he continued to use the gym at the Portsmouth and pump iron, albeit not the tectonic plates of his earlier days. The file cabinets in his apartment were crammed with news clippings of health supplements and exercises to be incorporated, and it all attested to his lifelong passion and was one of the many reasons that longevity was his birthright. So as I write this, I see decades of my life roll by as he appeared in different roles. The dad who was a photographer, capturing our childhoods and lives that became the black and white touchstones of my past. The dad who took us on adventures tobogganing in Kildonan Park, spellbound at the raging water at the Lockport Locks, trying to entice me to go up in an aeroplane, not succeeding. The dad who entered every contest and sometimes was the winner, who gave me my best bike ever, although a trip to Disneyland would have been cool too. The dad who let me drive his Austin Mini when I learned how to drive a stick shift and how to hold the driver's door closed when I took a tight turn, and who didn't seem to complain when I brought it back with an almost empty tank. The dad who invested in a bakery that seemed to pay you in buns, not cash. The dad who worked long hours in the basement, hidden behind mountains of financial documents that he turned into tax returns that were laboriously typed out with carbon paper and a one-finger typing method, and which we would then triumphantly drive to the post office at 5 minutes to midnight on April 30th to join the long line of cars with other accountant fathers who had similar piles of client returns to be postmarked before the midnight deadline. The dad who'd seasonally get us to help him take off the winter windows and replace them with summer screens. The dad who sat proudly watching me graduate from chiropractic school and who may not have understood what the journey was that I'd undertaken, but who was willing to support me to succeed. The dad who was the king of the dad jokes, with volumes to mine for material that he used with killer one-liners at the most opportune time or farmed out to Shayla. The dad who gave me exotic silk ties with palm trees and beet violet sunsets from the late 1940s that he wore to dinner dancing dates with our mom. The dad who on the small backyard patio we had on Burren would slather his physique and soak in the sun long before it was unhealthy to do so. The dad for whom grape nut flakes for breakfast was an ultimate pleasure, and the dad for whom being offered a piece of chicken to eat was the ultimate pain. The dad who stood at my wedding with Dina to share the greatest joy in my life. And the dad who sat with Kinsey and I as we said goodbye to Ruth, all of us holding on to each other, united in a grief and solace. You were also the dad who 3 long weeks ago, when I rushed to your bedside at the Grace Hospital with a fractured hip at 3 a.m, having just arrived on a flight from Vancouver, you calmly opened your eyes when I gently woke you and said, in a welcoming and effervescent tone, "Hi, how are ya?" And then you were the dad with whom I shared the most intimate time of our life together, as you lay in a bed unable to stand for 2 weeks, having undergone surgery, post-recovery time, unable to eat, and for whom each breath became a labor of survival as you pushed into a rising ocean of liquid in your lungs to capture whatever air you could. And I marveled at your ferocious will to live and trust in your body to grant you more time. And then you were the dad who, having lost your last breath, left a thunderous silence, and in its magnitude swallowed the world itself. You were the warrior in a battle where no one is victorious. When I was a child, I called you Flops. It was a name that came to me probably by the same grace by which I called my brother Kinsey. It was a name that for my entire lifetime I greeted you with and used to call your attention. And also when in the 1950s I recall waking on an early morning summer's day much like this, to find that you'd stepped out of the house to go to work, striding confident in your suit fedora and leather briefcase on your way to the bus stop on Main. I rushed out the screen door in my pajamas and I called out after you, grabbing your pant leg, not wanting you to leave. And today, I do the same, but also understanding that it was time to go. And so I can only say goodbye, Flops, with all my love.
Thank you, Rabbi Ben Rosh. Thank you. Thank you to all the pallbearers. Thank you to all of you for coming. Excuse any repetition. Roses are red, violets are blue. I know I saw them hanging on the line. It was raining cats and dogs, and I stepped in a poodle. These are classic jokes from my dad. He had a joke, for literally, as Joe said, for every occasion, and his love of humor was a constant in our lives. He always had a stack of joke books handy, and he had the greatest respect for people who could deliver a great line. Abe Posen was the son of Meir Posen and Gittel Gorari, both socialists from Ukraine, who championed the language of Yiddish. In fact, it was my dad's first language, despite being born in Canada, and he loved speaking it as we sometimes did together. I once told him I wanted to change my name to Mordechai Gorari, as I loved the name, which in Hebrew means young lion, and was changed to Gray when the family came to Canada. He said, please don't, because there wouldn't be any more Posens down the road. He grew up in a small 2-bedroom house on Burroughs where his parents took in boarders to help supplement their income. The boarders slept in the dining room behind a curtain. They were teachers from Peretschul who recently arrived from pre-war Europe, or sometimes his cousins who came from the country for extended stays. I have no doubt that it taught him about giving, sharing, and reaching out to help people in need. Growing up in the storied north end of Winnipeg, there were shuls everywhere as well as shoichets, kosher butchers. As a kid, he once saw the shoichet kill a chicken, and his body continued to strut around while being beheaded, after being beheaded, and it was the start of a lifelong aversion to any kind of fowl. He grew up surrounded by his mom's brothers and sisters and cousins who all lived close by, and the Yiddish socialist intelligentsia, with families such as the Millers and Cherniaks. Family was everything to the Posens and Grays, and my dad maintained those bonds throughout his life, whether it was Winnipeg, Toronto, or Detroit. During the war, he served in the Royal Canadian Air Force in signals and was stationed in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. He told me about the letters he would write in Yiddish to his parents. They often arrived with sections of the letters cut out, censored. Who knew that the RCF had fluent Yiddish censors? After the war, my dad contemplated what his profession might be, and he thought refrigeration repair might be his calling. Now it's hard to imagine. He also wanted to be a gym teacher as he loved sports and the power of exercise. Instead, his choice was influenced by his work as a budding bookkeeper at his Uncle Motel's soft drink bottling plant that eventually became Blackwood's Beverages, and his father's work as the Gizbar for the Workmen's Circle. He became a chartered accountant and ended his career as the chief auditor for special projects for the province. He also kept a very busy private practice, and his clients were mostly made up of the Grine, the Jewish immigrants who operated small businesses such as grocery stores and shops. He helped these people over and above by not charging them, or at least reducing his fees when they couldn't pay, or going out of his way to save them money. And they adored him for his acts of kindness. Many of them, funnily enough, turned out to be the parents of my friends, or Shayla's uncles and aunties. For Eric and I, our childhood was made extra special by our father. He was like a kid in an older person's body who couldn't wait to show us things that he loved, be it railways, wrestling, museums, or a myriad of other things. I learned early on about his ability to forgive and forget. Once, before we were going to go for a family ride in the car, Eric and I were playing around with stones in the backyard, and I threw a stone that unintentionally hit the windshield and cracked it. When he came out to go for the ride, he was mad, but he didn't make a big thing about it, knowing my guilt served as my punishment. Or when I borrowed his car to go to my friend Charlie Grisman's wedding, I parked it on the street in front of B'nai Avram, and a novice driver totaled the car in a hit and run. I called him, and as he looked at it in total shock with me, he didn't say a negative word. Or when Charlie, I check with Charlie, it's okay, and I were caught stealing crab apples by the police. And they brought me home as a would-be criminal. After the police left, he smiled and he laughed at the situation, knowing that I had learned my lesson. His passion for weightlifting started as a teenager at the old YMHA on Albert Street, and later he mentored up-and-comers to the sport. It also ignited his passion for the YMHA and what it represented. He became a respected board member and eventually sat on the board of governors. He was also the finance person for the Wise Sportsman Dinner from the outset. Even now, when I go to the campus, older members still ask about him and say, "Give him regards." As Shayla often said about him, he was strong on the outside and soft on the inside. He was full of humility, easily embarrassed if you put the spotlight on him. He wasn't emotionally demonstrative, but he became more so as he grew older. As he entered his late 90s, I would try to engage him in conversation about his age and his feelings about it. He was quite stoic and didn't want to engage, and I realized despite his penchant for being a worrier, he was truly a person who lived in the moment, embracing every new day with curiosity, positivity, and a sense of adventure. We're here today because Abe's body literally wore out after exceeding the warranty long ago. This last year was a struggle for him physically. He had fractured a collarbone from a fall last year, and his spine developed a painful curvature that wouldn't allow him to raise his head without great difficulty. But Abe being Abe told me about 2 months ago, we should look for a new doctor to help straighten my spine. That's optimism. Over the last few months, some of his regular habits started to drop away. He stopped doing his beloved crossword puzzles, a daily routine that he did with a pen. He stopped exercising at the gym at the Portsmouth where he lived. He didn't read the daily paper cover to cover with the same enthusiasm or attention to detail. But what he continued to do was take a deep interest in everything his grandsons Ariel and Navi did, calling us early in the morning to say they were in the paper. He was proud of the accomplishments of his granddaughters-in-law, Hilary and Alana, and especially in hearing about his great-granddaughter, Liel Romy Posen, who was born on my mom's birthday and was named after her. He always wanted to know if there were new photos of her to see. Shayla, thank you for being the daughter my parents never had, your support and your genuine love for our dad, and being his personal hairstylist. I'm also so grateful to my brother Eric for being here to take care of our dad for what he originally thought would be a pleasant week visit, but turned into an emotional roller coaster. If you asked my father, how was your meal? How was your day? He would inevitably answer, not bad, which I came to realize really meant good. Well, Pop, I think we can all agree. You indeed led a not bad life, but in the most amazing way possible. Lehitrat, bekol tuv und sei gesund, mein Taten. Hitbarachnu.
We're now just going to fill in the grave, and in Jewish tradition, we talk about chesed shel emet. We talk about a kindness which is a kindness of truth. And a kindness of truth is when you do something for someone and you expect nothing in return. And so when we do something for a person who's just been deceased, it's the highest act of kindness. We get nothing in return. And this is the last act that we can do for Abe, and that is to help fill up his grave. So I'm going to ask everybody to come forward. There are shovels here. Everybody can take turns. The tradition is that you don't pass the shovel to the next person, but rather you just shovel in and then you just put it down. The next person will pick up the shovel and we'll at least try to fill so that we cover the casket over here. So I ask everybody to come forward.
know, like that, like any of that. Stories as well.
You're good.
Really? How long? Okay. They're still doing it. Yeah, they're still doing it. Absolutely. Hey, that's what it is. Happy belated congratulations on becoming grandparents. Yeah, Montreal, yeah. Pardon me? I don't need the extra pressure, but okay. I'll try. Hey, did I see that Manny's not in? What did they do? Yeah. It's insane there, yeah. Is it here? Where? Really? Wow. I'm actually home a lot. He's the one who's away. I go see her a lot at the hospital all the time. Right. Stop being a physician. Weird sketch. Doctor in a hospital. Surgeon in a hospital. That's a while. Doesn't mean music doesn't hold a candle. Doing hold a candle. Being on call. Serious. That's absurd. Almost toxic. Atlanta's in the States, yeah. I picked him up at midnight last night. He was up for 24 hours. He's holding it together pretty well. He's, no, barely. Yeah. Yeah. Nice to see you. How are you? Sorry about that. Thank you. I miss, I haven't really done any Ron things in a long time. I don't even know how much Ron is doing, but I miss being able to share the stage with you. Lyric theater and stuff like that. It's been so long. I think it's more to minimize the odd event fan saving. I don't know that he's doing as much of the summary public stuff. How about you? It looks like you're still keeping as busy as ever. Yeah. Well, they're fun because you're there.
Oh, really?
Oh, good. A lot of traveling, yeah. I'm actually in Montreal. Yeah, my wife is in school there, / work there, so portable musician. I could be anywhere at this point, because everything I do is just my own
project now, which is mostly either I tour or I work out of my kind of home studio, so it's fine. I can be wherever. It's fun. My band, yeah. Winnipeg guys. Yeah. 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 They're going to be moving to the States in a year, also for his wife's school. So which is great because...
Hi.
Thank you. They don't know yet. I can't wait for them to be within a couple thousand kilometers. Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully somewhere warm and nice. Any time of year we can be. Yeah, exactly. The kid he'll be 2 in just over a month. Yeah. She's still there, yeah.